Quiz time. What is this tower? If you answer Prince of Darkness, congratulations. You would be correct in around 40 other versions of BTD6. But you're wrong, not in this version. Despite being the exact same model, these are actually two completely different and separate Tier 5s. So what is this mystery tower? What did it do to deserve being removed? And was it really the worst tower in BTD6's history? Towers are usually never removed. If a tower is bad, and for some reason not named Oben, it will eventually receive buffs to put it back into the meta. We've seen this cycle repeat over and over with each new balance change. It helps to make sure that no tower is neglected, and makes the game feel fresh every patch. They can do this because each tower's design is typically very balanced and well thought out, only requiring a few number changes to get them in the right place. But if a tower's design is inherently bad and unbalanced, then it becomes tricky to balance that tower. Going back to version 1 of Bloons, it was a very different time. There was no Steam version yet, the only expert maps were #ouch and Muddy Puddles, Oben was actually good, and Moabs weren't even 3D models yet. They were just PNGs. If you were to boot up version 1 for the first time after being spoiled with the other Bloons versions, you're not going to find the Prince of Darkness anywhere in the game. It's not in the upgrade menu, and it's nowhere to be found in the game files. Instead, you'll find a very similar, but not identical, copy of the POD called the Soulbind. Let's have a brief overview of what the tower does. Soulbind was the original Tier 5 for the Wizard Monkey's bottom path. The previous upgrades for the bottom path were unchanged, so you'll still see it using Shimmer to decam balloons and Necromancer to spawn undead balloons. Where it differs is from its ability. You could use it to Soulbind a tower. By soulbinding a tower, if your lives went below 0, then your tower would be sacrificed in exchange for lives, at a rate of $100 spent per life. That's all the tower had going for it. It didn't reanimate blimps yet, or buff other necromancers. Let's deconstruct this and think about why this tower was completely useless and deserved to be removed. First, think about its possible use cases. It's a tower designed as a safety net against leaks. So naturally, it's going to compete with the Spike Factory, specifically the bottom path, for cleaning up leaking balloons. Soulbind costs $25,920, while Permaspike costed just $22,000 in version 1. It seems like a small gap, but this life-to-money ratio quickly made it extremely expensive and impractical. Let's say one of our Moabs miraculously gets through our tough defense. A Moab before round 81 will leak 616 lives and 460 lives during round 81 and above. The number decreases over time because ceramics change in round 81, having less RBE overall. Where a normal ceramic would usually break into 2 rainbow balloons, a super ceramic only breaks into 1 rainbow balloon. In the hardest game mode chimps, you will need $61,600 worth of sacrifices to tank a Moab, and $46,000 to tank a Moab past run 80. That is a lot of money, and outside of maybe a couple beginner maps, would completely cripple your defense to the point where you have just delayed the inevitable. Even then, the money spent on Soulbind can just be spent on other towers that can easily take down a Moab. There's only one potential use case I can see for Soulbind, and that is in ultra late game scenarios. Moab and ceramic layers will increase in RBE, or the amount of damage required to take it down, but not the amount of lives it will take when it gets through to the exit. It makes it so that it is technically more cost efficient to spend the money to tank the lives instead of spending money to try to pop the blimps. Since you can bypass having to do all the extra damage on the Moab and the ceramics and just tank it. This is of course assuming that the Moab in question got past the incredibly broken, nerf-free Permaspike at the peak of its abilities, the Legend of the Night ability, and your stalling towers. But if it does, boom, you got yourself a winner. The second reason is simply who's gonna use it. If you were to not leak, then the tower is theoretically useless. I know, this sounds stupid. Obviously, if you don't die, you don't need this tower. What I'm trying to say is that if you have a strategy that you are confident in, then there should be no reason to use Soulbind. It provides no additional damage compared to the Necromancer, and at the stage of the game where you buy it in, you're going to be leaking rainbows, ceramics, and Moabs, not just normal red and blue balloons. This quickly becomes really expensive and really risky to Soulbind towers. Maybe in beginner maps, Soulbind is okay, as you can afford the financial loss because it takes less money to beat those maps. But tanking just 1 ceramic is $10,400 you can't get back, easily removing any viability in harder maps where every dollar counts. It's also very hard to strategize the exact amount you need to tank something, so it's possible you can end up just overspending on tanking something. It could have been interesting to see if it got a significant price reduction. If it were dirt cheap, like $12,000 cheap, it could maybe be okay in the early game, but Ninja Kiwi recognized this and they changed the tower. The entire tower got reworked to the Prince of Darkness, finally getting the zombie Moabs and BFBs. Now don't get me wrong, this tower still sucked really bad. I mean, it was littered with a bunch of problems of its own. It was underpowered outside of a glitch where you could just spawn in any balloon you wanted from sandbox mode. But it had a design that was easier for the balance team to work with, and eventually over time it was put into a balanced state and became the Prince of Darkness we all know today. So a classic paradox thought about by ancient monkey philosophers arose, called the Ship of Soulbind. If this Tier 5 was a rework of another Tier 5 and looks exactly like the other Tier 5, is it a new tower, or is it just the old Tier 5 but given a new name and new mechanics? The answer? It's a new tower, or else I would have to change this title.